This is a pretty much fully loaded 16-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro, and it cost me $4,000. And you know what? That's pretty cheap. That's right, this $4,000 MacBook is actually cheap. And today I'm going to tell you why. Whether you're new to the Mac or you've been around since the early Motorola days, today's video sponsor, Clean My Mac X, has got your back. Clean My Mac is simply the best software on the market to clean and optimize your Mac, scanning for junk, malware, and unused apps to keep your storage free and your Mac running great. Clean My Mac's most famous feature is the Smart Scan, which looks at your whole system and searches for old log files, user cache, as well as malware, and runs optimization to free up space on your drive. For extra insight into where your data is located, Space Lens gives a graphical breakdown of all your files, and malware removal gets rid of any threats. Plus, the new menu app shows detailed information about your Mac's battery, memory, temperature sensors, and consumption processes. And there's a limited time offer for the first 5 days after this video is published. Use code LukeMiani for a 30% discount. So to check out Clean My Mac, head over to the link in the description below. And now let's get back into the video. Now, it's no secret that personal computers have changed a lot over the past 40 years. I mean, this PowerBook G3 is the same age as me, and it looks nothing like computers that we have now. But to really understand the big change in affordability of these devices, we have to go back even further to 1984. When the original 128K Macintosh was announced back in 1984, it had a starting price of $2,495. Adjusted for inflation, that's $7,300 today. And yet at the time, it was actually one of the most affordable personal computers out there.
Now, the telephone was the first and only really desktop appliance. And we think Macintosh can become the second desktop appliance for these tens of millions of people. Because of the 235 people in America, only a fraction know how to use a computer. Macintosh is for the rest of us.
It was the first time in history that a computer was really, truly personal. It was no longer a $40,000, $50,000 piece of equipment that could only be bought by teams of professionals. But famously, Apple didn't sell enough Macintosh units to prevent the standoff between Steve Jobs and John Sculley that would eventually lead to Jobs leaving the company just a year later in 1985. And without Steve Jobs there, well, the prices, they went up. In 1989, Apple announced two of the most significant products in their history. First off was the Macintosh SE30, the peak of Apple's classic Mac design. It was the most powerful and arguably the most popular, even featuring in shows like Seinfeld for a number of years. The other was the Macintosh Portable, the first laptop.
The Macintosh Portable is a powerful new tool that allows firefighters to battle the biggest enemy of all, time.
But despite the revolutionary status of the portable Macintosh, both it and the Macintosh SE30 started at $6,500 in 1989. Adjusted for inflation, that's $15,996 today. Those are some truly eye-watering price tags, and as such, computers at that time were a major purchase akin to buying a car. Heck, I mean, in 1990, Apple introduced the LC series, which stood for low cost. And in 1990, low cost meant $2,500, which is $5,847 in today's money. Throughout the 1990s, Apple had a chaotic lineup that was filled with expensive products. In fact, everything was an expensive beige box. Even your normal standard Dell in 1997 was many thousands of dollars just for a home computer. And even when Steve Jobs made it back to the company and introduced the PowerBook G3 at the end of 1997, this thing was not cheap either. It cost $5,700 starting. That's a cool $10,500 today. And remember, in 1997, Apple didn't have an entry-level tier that normal everyday people could buy instead of getting the big expensive ones. That wouldn't come until 2 years later with the 1999 introduction of the iBook. And to be honest, even that was not at all cheap by today's standards. I mean, we think about the original clamshell iBook as the fun, quirky, affordable mass market laptop that brought internet connected devices into the hands of many more people than before. But did you know that in 1999 when that came out, it was at a price of $1,599, and that when adjusted for inflation, that's $2,900 today? Yeah. Apple's cheap mass market laptop was $3,000. So let me put this into another perspective, because just looking at price tags adjusted for inflation only gives you part of the picture. In 1997, the median US household income was $37,000. The PowerBook G3 cost $5,700. That's 15.4% of your household income on a laptop. Right now, the US median household income is $71,000 a year, and a 16-inch MacBook Pro at $2,499 represents 3.5% of a household's annual income. So we're not just talking about a decrease in price of electronics, we're talking about a complete shift of the way that we look at purchasing computers. In fact, all of the main analogous Macs that are still in Apple's lineup today are just about half the cost that they were 20 years ago. Take a look at this comparison between the year 2000 Macs adjusted for inflation and the Macs that we have now. And it's not just Apple products where we see this. Take a look at this graph, which tracks consumer prices over the past 25 years. Pretty much every category has dropped dramatically. And there's another factor that we haven't even accounted for, and that is that computers now are not only cheaper, but they last longer too. Remember the Macintosh SE30 that we talked about earlier and its launch price of $6,500 in 1989? Well, by 1992, it had been renamed to the Macintosh Performa 200. It had the exact same Motorola CPU, the exact same 40 or 80 megabyte hard drive options, but they have the data bus. And with that, the price came down from $6,500 to $900 for essentially the same computer. That's insane. So when you look at the history of personal computers in this perspective, it really gives you an idea of how far things have come. I mean, we're talking about a period of time where you could spend $15,000 to $20,000 on a computer and 3 years later buy the exact same thing for a fraction of the cost. Computers became obsolete faster, they cost more, and they were less useful than they are today, obviously because of the pace of technological advancement. So it's really insane to think about the fact that I can sit here and make videos today talking about Macs from 5, 10, even 15 years ago in some cases, and how you can still use them today. But that simply was not possible 20 years ago. I mean, look at this, the G4 Titanium PowerBook. This guy came out in 2001. When this thing came out, the very concept of a laptop wasn't even 15 years old. But if you wanted to buy a 10-year-old PowerBook, it would be this, the PowerBook 100, which has a 9-inch monochrome passive matrix display, a 16 megahertz processor, and 2 megabytes of RAM. That was not usable in 2001. But now, you can easily buy a 2012 MacBook Pro and have a grand old time. This is an aspect of consumer electronics that I feel has completely gone unrecognized in the public sense. It's really wild to think about the fact that you could spend $3,000 and use a computer for a decade, when 20 years ago you would be spending nearly 10 grand and only get 4 years out of it. That's mind-blowing to me. And sure, yeah, some look at the current state of computers as a lack of innovation. Certainly year over year, we're not seeing as fast of a revolution. I mean, these two laptops are only about a year and a half apart, but they look completely different. And I mean, honestly, this one looks modern and this one looks ancient. So we're not seeing things like that happen anymore, but at the same time, I think it's a worthy trade-off. We pay far, far less, and we can use our computers far, far longer. I think that's a net positive. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I'm super interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this topic, as I find it really fascinating. And of course, thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.